artist, author, poet, and community activist who lives in Durham, North Carolina. Born in Washington, D.C., Dr. Eric Kelly III has been the CEO of the Black Business Expo USA for more than 40 years. Black Business Olympics mission is to raise scholarships and laptops for high school students going to college. The Black Business Expo USA is one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North America. Dr. Kelly is also the founder of the Black Business Olympics, one of the largest virtual global businesses showcasing events for Black business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. Last year, the Black Business Virtual Olympics showcased 145 speakers to over 600,000 attendees during their quarterly Black Business Expo event. This year, the Black Business Olympics plans to empower businesses by doing 6 events, and we're going to talk with him now. Let's bring on Dr. Kelly.
Hello, how you doing?
I am great, and I'm about to cough, so forgive me, sir. Excuse me. This always happens. You get all set up, and then you get the tickle. How you doing, Dr. Kelly?
Well, I'm doing great. It's always great to get an opportunity to come on your show. Been watching your show and watching all the great people that you've had on your show. Had a chance to watch it during the conference, the BU. I think it's the BU conference where you interviewed so many great people who shared their story, and I'm just honored that you would even think enough of me to have me to share my story as we look at the future.
Well, let me tell you, we're really honored to have you here because you are a visionary, sir. And I'm really proud to meet you and to know you and to see what you've accomplished. What happened all those years ago that made you decide to create these 2 products?
Well, I was going to high school my senior year. And like most guys, we're just having a good time in school. We're not thinking about our future. A lot of men may have been thinking about their future, but in my case, I really wasn't thinking about my future. And so 3 of my teachers grabbed me in the hall one day and took me into the teachers lounge. And in those days, going into the teachers lounge was like, okay, what you done? And so I go into the teachers lounge, and there is my art teacher, my history teacher, and my English teacher. And they say to me that I needed to draw more. And I'm looking at them like, what do you mean? And my art teacher says that what I do is I play around in my class, and then when the project is ready, I go into class and I'm quiet as a mouse, and then I do the best piece of art in the school. I didn't notice that because I always made A's in art, so that was mine just making an A. And so then she went on to say that we want you to draw for us, and if you don't draw for us, we're going to retain you. You're not going to
What?
graduate. This is what these teachers told me my senior year. And mind you, I had flunked the 5th grade. I tell people I had flunked the 5th grade because I went to school every day. I drew, I ate, and I played. And when I got retained, I was shocked. And my grandmother said, "What did you do? What did you do in school?" And I told her, and she said that, "Well, they're going to pick at you next year." And I was like,
Mhm.
"No, they're not going to pick at me next year, Mom," because I was hanging with all the bad boys. And so it
I
was,
can't even see you as a bad boy for real, for real. That is hilarious.
well, most people would say that because I was a real good jokester in school. And so I'm in the teachers lounge, and my history teacher says, "You're gonna have to draw for me for my class." My English teacher said, "You have to do Macbeth and draw for me." And my art teacher said, and you're gonna have to do three pieces of artwork for me in your class to pass. And so I'm one of those people that I was raised by my great grandfather, who at 9 years old started a museum for me. And that museum is still going on today. It's called the Eric Kelly Museum.org for those who want to check it out. And I always believed in competing. And so I saw it as competition. They saw it as punishment. And so every night before I went to bed, I would draw. And so in the morning time, I would come to school early, and I would drop by each class and drop the artwork off, and drop the artwork off, and drop the artwork off, and I go hang with the boys. And so we did that. I did that all year until at the end of the year, I had enough artwork to fill the whole hallway of a high school, both sides.
I love it.
And so when the Durham Lynx, who was giving out the trophy for the best artist in the state, came to Hillside to look at the artwork, look at my artwork, as they did it every year. This was an annual event. And the previous year, Hillside had won. A guy by the name of Ricky Cooper had won. And I still beat myself up today because I keep saying, that piece of artwork he did was all right. You know, that's how you feel when you're an artist. And so the lady, they came and they saw my work, and I won the top artist of the state of North Carolina. I got a plaque and $500. And then letters start coming to me. And I didn't get a scholarship for North Carolina Central University, but because I was here in Durham and I wanted to go to North Carolina Central University, after I did research to find out some of the top Black artists were teaching at the school. So I took my portfolio down there to the dean, Lana Henderson, and I showed her all these letters I had. And lo and behold, they created a scholarship for me to come to North Carolina Central University. And my grandmother, after I stopped selling cars and opened up my advertising agency, came to my office and said she saw a real difference in me once I got an art scholarship and once I went to college. And the thing that really, and I tell people this all the time, I don't come from a rags to riches story. I don't come from and we hear so many people when they start to talk, they always want to seem like they just made it through. They had this to happen, this to happen,
Push.
this happened to me, and I got there. And I tell people, well, I was raised by my great grandfather, and he said the number one thing in this world to do is to think. He said you have to be relentless. And he said that you have to research whatever you're going to do so that you can be the best at it. And so that's where I come from. You know, my teachers that was pushing me, they was pushing me because they saw something. I was pushing because that's what I do. That's my family pride, is to push. And so when my grandmother came to my office, she had this project that she wanted to do because she was a negotiator for the AFL-CIO, a civil rights leader in Durham. And she was one of those Black women. Her nickname was Big Mama. And
I had a Big Mama.
Yeah, everybody has one. And she was the Black lady who could convince white people to give a raise to the Black folk, because the Black folk was mad because they weren't making enough money. And she make everybody feel good about Black people getting more money and white people giving them more money. And so I watched.
Somebody got to do it, though.
They do.
Somebody got to do it.
And
somebody got to wave the flag.
Yes. And so I lived through that with her because I was with her all the time. And so when she brought the project to me, I took that project to the Black Data Processing Organization, because I was their fundraising guy. And I said, this will be a great project to fundraise on. I didn't believe in her project. I didn't think her project was going to work. Matter of fact, I only took it to them to see if it would work. And when I got there, the president of the organization, after 2 months of saying, yes, we're going to do it, comes to a meeting and said he wasn't going to do it. But if you know me, and I was out there selling booths for the show, I was out there raising money for the show. So I had raised about $7,000, and all the Black Data Processing Group needed to do was give me $600 for 3 ballrooms. And then I was going to give them $7,000, and it was going to be their show. But the guy did not like the fact that I came up with the idea. It wasn't his idea. So he told me he wasn't going to do it. My great grandfather always told me, whenever you get mad, don't say nothing, because you will always regret it. And I'm sitting there heated because other than all this work, I couldn't tell them what I was doing, because my great grandfather used to say, don't be nobody's fool. Don't
Mhm.
talk too much. So
Mhm.
I didn't want to say, well, I already raised $7,000 for y'all, and I
Mhm.
already got the hotel ready, and all y'all got to do is come. And so I walked out of that meeting very, very upset. And I get to my office, and I'm sitting in my office, and my little brother comes in, and he said, "Man, what's going on?" And I tell him, and he said, "Well, how much money did you raise?" I said, "I raised about $7,000." He said, and you already got enough to pay the hotel?" I said, "It's only $600." And he said, "Well, we need to do an expo." And I said, what you mean we? He said, "You got the money. You already been advertising. Let's do it." And so with him saying that, a bulb just flipped in my head because I'm a loyal guy. So if I'm loyal to you, I am still working hard
Mhm.
loyal.
Right.
I still wanted to go back to them and say, "Look, guys, this is what we're doing." So we did the first show. We had 93 business owners, and then the president and all the group came there, and he said, "Well, next year when we do it, it's gonna be bigger." And I looked at him and said, "No, hold up, man. It's not gonna be no next year for y'all." I said, "This is my show." I said, "Next year you can get a booth." And they were upset with me, but I learned a long time ago, you can't worry about other people's feelings when you're doing things. And so that was the first year that we did it. And then my grandmother came to the show to show you the type of woman she was. And I'm bragging to everybody about this great show, 93 tabletops. I think we had about 2,500 people in there, because I was on radio and television, so people knew me, and in the news, so people knew who I was.
Mhm.
And so I had the newspaper and the TV. Everybody was there. It had never happened in the city, so everybody was excited. My grandmother walks in and says, "This is a nice little show."
I love your grandmother, Big Mama. I
You're
love Big Mama.
telling you,
Big
and
Mama said,
I
"Wait,
was
wait."
I was way up here, and all of a sudden, I was way down there. And she said to me, she looked me straight in
Mhm.
my eyes, and she said, "The reason I told you it's a great little show is because you didn't do your research. Yeah, this looks good for the hotel, but this is not a real show." And she's
Mhm.
still cutting me up, but she loved
Mhm.
me. So I know
As
it wasn't
they
coming
should.
from hatred. It was coming from, look,
Mhm.
do the work. And so the next year, what I did, I spent all year going to shows and watching shows. And one of the things I noticed, they had pipe and drapes. I didn't have pipe and drapes. And they also had people taking them, people around the show. They had announcements at the show. And this is what people don't understand. When you're going through something and you're learning something, you have to pay attention. And one of my gifts, I believe, is listening. So I was listening to everything. So I did my next show, and we had 250 booths. And we got the big, because the way the hotel is made, they have the ballrooms, and then they have the convention center. So now I filled up the convention center,
Oh,
and I
wow.
filled up the four ballrooms. And so I got it looking real nice. And she comes in, she walks in, and I'm thinking my grandma's gonna say, "Great show, great show. This is good." She walks in and she says to me, "Eric," I'm not gonna say my nickname, I almost said it. You
Almost.
know, Eric, you're trying to do a good job, but what I need you to do is I need you to sit down and really look at what you're doing. How much
Mhm.
profit did you make? I said, "Profit?" She said, "It's not about the show, it's about the business. How much profit did you make?" And I said, "Well, we didn't make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I spent a lot of money to do the show." She said, "That's not a show then." And I'm looking at her, and she said, "Well, we'll have a conversation about this later on." So I was way up here. Now I'm back down here because I'm trying to
Mhm.
figure out. So what happens, I sit down with my grandmother, and then she tells me, she said, "Look, you got to have keynote speakers, and you got to have sponsors." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "You got to have the cheese." I said, "What do you mean?" "You got to have the salt." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You heard the adage, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it
Mhm.
drink." This is where I first heard, and I still quote this today. She said, "But if you put salt in his mouth, he will drink." And I was like, wow. So I went on this whole thing of working to find out Where do I get keynote speakers from? And a whole bit. Now, in those days, you could watch television, and there was a gentleman by the name of Tony Brown of Tony Brown's Journal.
Yes.
And I got on, when you watch TV in those days, people don't know you actually saw the telephone number on the TV for the actual show. So I get on the phone and I call, and he picks up, and I say, hello, I'd like to speak to Mr. Brown. He said, hi, I'm Mr. Brown. I say, I do the Black Business Expo, and we'd like you to come to Durham and speak. How much would you charge? And he said, well, I charge $4,000. I said, click. and I said, click, because I'm the kind of person, I just want to know what it's going to take to get the job done. I'm not interested in having.
So now I can plan. I got a long range plan there.
I got to go. And so about 2 months later, I called him back up, and he said, you hung up on me so fast. I didn't think you was going to call me back. I said, well, Mr. Brown, you told me it was going to cost $4,000 for you to come. I needed to get $4,000 because I got to have you at my show. He starts to laugh, right? He said, well, this is the funniest thing that ever happened to me. And I said, I'm gonna get you an airplane. I get you a suite at the hotel, because I'm kind of the kind of guy that understands that part.
Right.
So once I got him, then I started talking to companies and corporations, letting them know that I had Tony Brown of Tony Brown's Journal. And for those who don't know, at that time, he was the absolute number one person in Blackness. And what I mean by that is anything that happened in the Black community, he was the guy. And so I got Tony Brown. Then I was looking at Black Enterprise magazine, and on the front cover was George Frazier.
Yeah.
So I immediately read his story, and guess what was in the magazine? His number. So I called him up and asked him to come and speak. He told me it was going to be $3,000. I said, okay, and went and got his money. And then, because I'm sitting with my grandmother, and she says, who are you going to bring that's going to talk about economic development? And I was at a event, and I met a friend of mine named Ken Whitfield, who was telling me about a guy by the name of he's slipping my mind right now. It'll come back to me, but Claude Anderson, Dr. Claude Anderson. And Claude Anderson was talking about economics. And so I got in touch with Claude Anderson. So I had these 3 dynamite people to come to the show. Mm-hmm. Now, I did not know how popular Tony Brown was.
Yeah.
I did not know how popular George Frazier was. I really didn't know that Claude Anderson had a following. Okay. Yeah. And so when I put it in the newspaper and on television, my phone just started to ring.
Like that?
We had, yes, just like that. We had this was my 3rd year. We had 7,000 people to come.
That's crazy.
And we had 350 booths at this show. And what was really, really crazy is that the people stayed all day, because I put on a program so that people would come and be there. And I didn't charge any money. Mm-hmm. And people was like, you got to charge. I said, no, you got to understand what the vision is. The vision is to raise scholarships for kids. And my grandmother brought the project to me because she wanted to raise scholarships for kids, because she said she saw what happened to me and how I changed. Right. And that's really been why we are able to do it. She's passed on now, but my mother runs our board. And when the pandemic hit, I'm in the meeting, and of course, everybody else is serious, but it's my mama's meeting, so I ain't got to be so serious. And so we're talking about doing the Black Business Expo. And what happens is I talk to the hotel guy, and he says, well, I don't think you're going to be able to do it this year. And I'm like, because we move it to August for Black Business Week. And so we're talking, and then the governor comes out and says only 10 people can congregate in a space. And so now I'm like, we can't do it. And it was going to be the year we had just did two back to back, and this was going to be the 3rd year, and now we couldn't do it. Right. And so I was joking about doing something. I said, let's do an Olympics. Let's don't do what everybody else does. most people who do events, they just do either a Saturday or a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They make it a weekend event. And so I was saying, let's don't do a weekend event. Let's set up and do an event like a business plan. Let's do a Monday and let's do business inspiration. Let's do Tuesday and let's focus on advertising, public relations, marketing, and sales. Let's do Wednesday and focus on social media. Let's do Thursday and focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's do Friday and let's focus on Generation X versus Generation Z, how to bridge the digital divide. Let's do Saturday and let's do Black business and the culture, and talk about authors, talk about movies, and talk about the behind the scenes stuff where people make money. And then let's do Sunday and let's do Black business and the church. And let's talk about business and the church, because that's where our culture is. And I'm joking. And my mother says, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Right.
And so that was the birth of the Black Business Olympics. And we've done 145 speakers in 2020. And what happened was we streamed it to Facebook from the IBM network, and we had over 36,000 people to come.
That's wonderful.
First of all, I'm shocked and amazed because I don't understand social media like that. But I do have a social media lady who works with us. Her name is Kimberly Moore. And Kimberly McLean. And Kimberly McLean was working on all of our social media to put our information everywhere. So after we did the first one, my mother said, let's do 4 next year, because businesses are hurting and they need a platform to get their information out. And so we did it in February, and we had 48,000 people to come. Then we did it again. We had 150,000 people to come. Then we had 250,000 people to come. And then by the end of last year, we had over 600,000 people to see our information.
So wait a minute, because we only have 7 minutes. Now, we got your whole business plan. We gonna implement. But this is really huge. This is huge. And I'm grateful that you actually took the time to go through those steps, because sometimes we forget that people have had to get through, and we start here and we move a little fast and we move a little bit back. But you've been consistent with this. Let's do this. Tell me what the dates are so that people will know the dates. We need to be able to contact somebody. I would imagine you still probably have some space available. I don't know if you need a couple of new speakers or something like that. If you give us that information, and I'm sure that Katanya will be so gracious, and she's already got the website up. But if you can go up there and just give us that information, sir.
Well, first of all, for those who would like to speak at the Black Business Expo, you can contact our office at 919-308-9090. That's 919-308-9090. If you would like to speak, you can go to our email at bbxspeakers1.com. And you can go there and you can send us an email to speak. I didn't get a chance.
Is that BBX as in boy?
Yes, BBX Speakers 1 at Gmail. Or you can email me directly at erickelly45@gmail.com. Our mission and our vision is this. Our kids are bombarded every day by the narrative of being an athlete, an entertainer, a rump shaker, a pimp, a criminal. And what we want to do with the Black Business Olympics is change that narrative. One of the biggest myths in our community is this, that Black people can't work together. The challenge is this: we don't see Black people working together. We have done 6 of these events. We've had over 645 business owners to speak, and we've done it 24 hours a day on a Black Business Network, and we have all been able to work together to make it happen. And so that's the myth that we want to dispel for our kids. We have kids watching who want to go from high school to college, and the reason that we do it is, in fact, to raise scholarships for kids to go to college, to laptop computers and up to $5,000. And of course, now you can put our cash out there if you like to donate to us, but give us a call and we definitely like to talk about that.
What's your cash app?
BBX USA. That's what it is, BBX USA. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to create a network that's 10,000 speakers to speak 24 hours a day on a network where our kids can see us as who we truly are. You know, when I talk about lawyers and doctors and scientists and talk about entrepreneurs, some of the scholarship dollars go to kids who want to be entrepreneurs. I would implore anyone that's listening, if you have a son, if you have a daughter, if you have somebody who has aspirations to go to college, please go to our website, fill out the information. We're not the same as many places. Most places say that you got to have a grade point average. We are like this. If you show us that you are really interested in your life, you want to make a change, and you do a 400-word essay, we're going to look at that. I have always been told the C and D students run the world. You know, many, and you asked me about the dates. March the 21st through the 27th is our next show. Then the show after that is going to be May 16th through the 22nd. Then July 18th through the 24th, September 19th through the 25th, and November 14th through the 20th. If you listen to those dates, you'll notice it is the third weekend in every other month. We're doing every other month this year. We did quarterly last year. We're doing every other month this year. Next year, we're going to do every month. Then we're going to get it down to every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks, and then get it down to every week, where we create a network that's going to be 24 hours a day of Black people speaking. And this is the key: speaking live, not information that people have put up like on YouTube and Facebook, where you can go back and see it, even though you'll always be able to go back and see it. But our secret sauce is that you are able to come and see it live. That's how we generate the numbers, because if you put 145 speakers that are going to speak and they invite some 2,000 of their friends, then you can see how we can get to the over 1 million people that we've gotten. And you can see how we're going to get to about 5 million at the end of the year. We're watching this in real time, and I am just as surprised as many of my speakers and the sponsors that this is happening. This movement really is a phenomenon, and I just want to thank all of the speakers who have spoken. I want to thank all of the team members: Sharon Campbell, Yolanda Henley. I could go on and on. I don't have a list here, so I know I'm gonna hear it when I leave. But I want to thank my mama. Okay. I want to thank my mama for saying to me that you're cheating the world. Mm-hmm. And when she told me I was cheating the world, she was talking about my talents, my art, my poetry, my singing, my dance, everything that I do. And the most important one is my thinking. I'm a visionary strategist, and I'm able to listen to what people say and help them to get to their goals. And she would say, why don't you help yourself by listening to yourself get to your goals? And so I just want to thank my moms. Her birthday was March the 2nd. And happy birthday to you. Your birthday just passed. Also,
Thank you. Well, but thank you, Dr. Kelly, for coming. And we're going to have you back. Please, everybody, take advantage of this opportunity to be a speaker or to actually donate to all of the programs that they have going on. So we'll have you back in another month or so, because I see we have a whole schedule. So we're going to have you in and out of here, sir. Thank you so much, Dr.
And thank you so very much for having me. I know I do a lot of talking.
That's all right. But you have information that we need, and you have information that we want our listeners to hear and to participate. So, Dr. Kelly, thank you very much. Black Expo, Business Expo is coming up the week of the 21st of March. Make certain that you get in touch with them. Thank you so much, sir, and we will be in touch.
And thank you so much for having me. And remember, genius is common, and I'll see you on the other side.
On the other side. All right. This is Marsha Jews. We want to thank Dr. Eric Kelly. And that Black Business Expo is really wonderful. So, especially if you're looking at, trying to make some changes with upcoming things that you're doing and you want to be able to speak, I think it's really wonderful. And hopefully, we have our next guest in the back, which would be Mr. Derrick J. Purcell, who is the director in operations and partner at Ida B's Table, a venture of the Real News Network. Innovation, excellence, and evolving with current trends. And Purcell's culinary creed has used his talents to foster an impeccable reputation within the catering and hospitality industry. Professionally developed at the Culinary Institute of America, where he received a dual certification of Pro Chef Level 2, CIA, and Certified Chef de Cuisine, ACF, 2009. He served 2 terms and president of the Greater Baltimore chapter of the American Culinary Federation, and he's the former Conciliar Culinaire Provincial, the Chain des Rôtisseurs, and he brings to the partnership over 20 years of experience in the hospitality industry. And he's proven his strengths in project management operations, and he's known for setting benchmarks with his innovation and strategic vision in client-focused environments. So welcome, Mr. Purcell. We've got some new stuff getting ready to happen over at Ida B's restaurant in Baltimore. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. You all have something special going on. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's in a great location. Parking's really easy and the food is marvelous. So talk to us about an upcoming event that's very special and everybody should be encouraged to attend. You want to share with us what you're up to?
Absolutely. Before I start, I just want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. Today's our anniversary. I have to start there. And then, so let's talk about the event that's coming up. So we have a book signing and a 3-course meal that will be happening at Ida B's Table on March the 18th. Not just any book signing, but this book signing will be that of the one and only Michelle Duster, who is the great-granddaughter of Ida B. Wells. And so while she's there, of course, she'll give us a brief history of who Ida B. Wells Barnett is, but she's also going to be talking about passing on the legacy. And I think that's an area that we can all do better in. I admire the fact that she's taken the time to educate the world on who her great-grandmother was and is, because she's living. So I have to use the present tense. And that's admirable. I think we all should be doing that. And to be quite frank, I don't think some of us know how to do it. But she's just taken the time to do one thing that's missing, and that's just tell the story. I think when you tell the story, not just do you pass on a legacy, but you empower the next generation. And that's something that we're in well need of.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very special corner there, and Ida B's sign and picture is hanging beautifully in the main hall. When you look at all that Ida B has been known for, what are the strongest suits that you think are important for this audience to remember and to share?
I think commitment, her sincere commitment, and her ability not to quit. We may feel that, or let's not say we may feel, we're in a much easier time today, but yet oftentimes people quit or they stop short of the goal. And she believed so much and had passion so much in doing investigative journalism and getting the story out that no matter what the cost, she documented it, she moved, but she never gave up. And so that's inspiring to me. I get that that same work ethic mentality from my grandfather and from my father and my parent, my mother and grandmother. they never gave up, and they instilled that in me. And so once I'm locked into a vision or a goal, I just want to complete it. And I think that that's exactly what we must do. And it's not really about me. I now have this newfound mentality that I've been living all the time. It's very important that we don't drop the baton when passing on the legacy to the next generation. And so the way I live today is going to impact not just my kids, but my children's children. And that's really what the mindset is.
That's a very interesting corner that the restaurant is located in. And what do you think? You've been through the pandemic and you're still standing, right? That's the huge thing. You're still standing. What would you have an opportunity to talk with folks that are here, many of whom are in the Baltimore or the region? Why is it important that that restaurant stays there?
This restaurant it's impactful, not just because it shares a name with a great person, but when you look at the opportunity for this restaurant to become community minded and impact the lives of the people that it serves, the community that it surrounds, Baltimore, the state, and the nation as a whole, it's amazing the opportunity that sits there. And so I think one of the most important things that can take place from this is to make sure that we're always making an impact. The food is amazing, and that should be the expectation. But the fact that we can educate, provide great customer service, and give people an opportunity to stand on a platform that they can express just what they're trying to express regarding the things that they're going through.
Mm-hmm. So has the menu changed after COVID? Are we with new things on the menu? I see. I didn't realize that you were also your own chef and that you won awards and all that. That's exciting.
So the menu has changed. We've evolved the menu, but we're currently doing private dining and catering only. So it's not open for dine in.
Okay.
As you said, the pandemic is really rough, and I think it's an opportunity to get it right. And so if you're a party of 10 or more, you can rent the private room and we'll provide you with a great menu. We've had some great things added on, like our poached salmon cakes. They're amazing. We have a crab cake, which is gluten-free. That's amazing. And some of those favorites that you all have become accustomed to, yes, we've altered some of the flavor profiles. And one of the things that we've been able to add to all of our offerings are vegan dishes. And we have my wife to thank for that. During the pandemic, she became vegan, and that inspired me to really figure out, how do I raise the level of vegan dishes? Mm-hmm. You really shouldn't have a ton of processed stuff. So it's definitely plant-based, and it's amazing. So there's a vegan smoked eggplant that we've added that has become really popular.
Oh, that sounds
Tuscan
good.
tomato sauce with fire roasted tomatoes. We're grilling the eggplant, and it has sauteed zucchini and squash, red peppers and onions, and it just tastes amazing.
Well, with the pandemic, we've been looking at different things with our foods too, and how we eat and what we're doing, and the things. The joke is that where's the fastest fast food, right? And we just have not done that in 2 years, right? And so when you sit down and you think about it, we really do need to be dealing with our health. And part of it is the consumption has to be about us being healthy and being able to sustain ourselves. When you look at the new menu, do you think that it's going to be a big sell now that you've got some of these changes? It's not some of the typical things. And how do you promote or market that type of change or create an excitement about this new menu?
Well, one of the things that I recognized is we missed the mark. There are a lot of testings that are going on that were not going on years ago. There's people that are gluten-free. There are people that are lactose intolerant. There are people that can't have X, Y, and Z. And so our menus have to reflect that. And most places that you go, there's going to be some type of gluten in those crab cakes, but it doesn't have to be. And so when you really want to serve the needs of the people, and let's face it, people come to restaurants because they want to eat what they want.
I want what I want when I want it.
Exactly. And that's true if they're vegan, if they're lactose intolerant, or if they can't have gluten. Mm-hmm. So not just what we do here, but everywhere the menu must change, or we're going to do a disservice to the people that are really trying to support us. Social media has made it where people are more vocal, and whether you're checking your emails, somehow you're going to hear about it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's important that we listen to those that desire to support us, but that we also, as chefs, we need to understand that we're serving the needs of the people. And as much as we may want to serve something that we like, we have to come outside of ourselves to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those that desire to support us.
I think it's really interesting because typically we're looking at soul food, right? Mm-hmm. And Ida B has had soul food, but with a twist.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And so now we're saying, okay, we still want to bring the good food, but now y'all need to really be thinking about your health. That's Absolutely. What it sounds like to me. Am I in the right
Absolutely.
sweet spot? And so what should we as consumers, as the people who are patrons, because we want you all to be back in the flourish, right? We're coming out of this COVID mess, but we want you to do that. And I think this is a very interesting concept because it's about the health and the strength of building healthier people in our community. How do you say that to somebody who, and I can't speak to somebody else because I love my fried chicken and I love all the greens with the pork, but I know that that's not where we need to be, right? We need to be thinking differently. How do you get that mindset? How do you market that new mindset and to galvanize a community to rethink and to try this new cuisine?
At the end of the day, I think it's education and conversation. And that's one of the things I've always recognized, that people are willing to talk if you engage them. So if you engage someone in a conversation, then they're willing to go ahead and tell you what they really feel. But if they feel that you're disconnected and there's no engagement, they'll only go as far as they feel that they can go. And any business, engagement is key. And I know wherever I shop, whether it's for food, if I'm not engaged, I don't feel welcome. And that's what's the key. You must feel welcome, and we care. It's really about caring about the people that we serve. And if there's a need, we can either meet that need, or we must be honest and say we're not going to be able to meet that need. Mm-hmm. So with the conversation, we can market millions of dollars, but word of mouth and appreciation, that's the best marketing tactic from a point of engagement and people enjoying what they have partaken in.
So this all sounds very interesting to me. And now my question is, Derrick Purcell, is there a cookbook on the way?
So it's funny. So I've been working on the cookbook for years. And it's not on the way. I have an outline, but you're inspiring me. And based off of what we were saying, I actually worked in the health.
You don't want me calling you, harassing you about the cookbook, right?
No,
I will. But I will, right?
I worked in the health profession before I came into this culinary industry. And I actually enrolled in nursing school before I took a job that made me love this passion of cooking. So I have an excellent knowledge of health and well-being and eating well. And a part of my Pro Chef Level 2 was a healthy cooking segment. And so I had to cook for Certified Master Chef and a dietitian, and I had to meet certain criteria. But I really feel passionate about, we do what we've done because we've seen it done. And you mentioned fried chicken, but I mean, sometimes my wife and I have deep conversations about plant-based and the fact that I want fried chicken.
Right.
Now, how can we engage and make the food that we like healthier? And I think that's an opportunity to really move forward and be able to have great dialogue. And it's really about building flavor profiles and not over salting.
Wait a minute. Back up. Did you say building flavor profiles?
Yes.
What is that? I don't know what that means.
So for instance, oftentimes we grab salt, but we grab salt. I'll give you a perfect example. For years, I cooked my eggs and I always put a sprinkle of salt on that egg. Well, after reading that eggs already have a level of sodium in them, do you really need to put salt, especially if you're going to add cheese? So now you have salty cheese and you have salt in your egg and you've added salt. And if you only need 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day, then you have to check with your doctor about that. But normally, 1,500 milligrams of sodium is what your body needs. Potentially, you've consumed 1,500 milligrams of sodium by that one omelet that you've had in the morning, because you've added salt, you've had the sodium in the egg, and then you've added cheese. And so we have an opportunity to be able to educate on these facts. And if you actually don't add the salt, but you've added it to cheese, you've complemented the flavor profile. It's the same with shrimp. Shrimp has high sodium. So you really don't need to add salt to the shrimp that you're cooking, because you have salt within the shrimp that you're eating. And so when you look at things like this, this is what I mean as far as the flavor profile. The same with sugar. With onions. Onions have this natural caramelization that can take place when you put it on high heat. It pulls the sugars out. But some people, because when they were learning how to cook, they added sugar to the caramelized onions.
Right.
They're adding sugar to it. And that's not a necessity. But if we just think through the entire dish prior to cooking it, we can make sure that we provide a well-balanced meal that are hitting all of the criteria for sodium, sugar, fat, etc. And so that's what we have an opportunity to do with the food that we are cooking. Everything doesn't need sugar. Everything doesn't need salt. And then sometimes your body is craving acid, and just a little pinch of a lemon juice, a little squeeze of a lemon or a lime, and you've complemented that taste that your body is really seeking without adding salt to it.
My daughter has been buying lately this key limes. Is it key limes? She's been buying those lately, and she puts it in the water. So now when I drink my water, I have to have this great big giant thing, right? And she makes me put the key lime in, and it's flavorful, but she says it has some nutritional value that your body needs with some sort of regularity. But there are all these little things. So how do we know, where do we go to find these little nuances that you're talking about if you haven't gotten us the book yet? Because we're waiting on the book.
I hear you.
I'm waiting. We say waiting on the book.
Yes. I hear you loud and clear. And now you're going to have my wife pushing me as well. So
and I'm going to be calling you too. I'm going to send you a text with some kind of regularity. So what's up with the book?
So what I've done, there are, I basically have studied. And so there is, and I'll use the CIA, for example. They wrote a book on healthy cooking techniques. There are other books out there, but there's also a flavor Bible that's out there. And I don't know who the author is, but it's on Amazon. And that's just a large casted net of some flavor profiles. But also, we shouldn't discredit those flavor profiles that we've come to love while growing up. But we should challenge ourselves to see And one of the great things, the things that we're eating, if we look at the back of the nutritional value on the back of the package, they're the nutritional values. That's a great place to start to recognize that you're putting too much of one thing into a dish, or you're consuming too much of one thing anyhow. It gives you what the daily recommended values are: sodium, sugar, fat, but then it tells you what this particular thing is going to have. And so by educating yourself just based upon what your consumption should be, it should challenge you to really look at, and there's a great program out there called Master Cook. And if you're into cooking, you can put your recipes in there and it'll calculate the nutritional values for you if you're truly interested in your health. It's a little work, but once you look at what you're doing, oftentimes we don't measure stuff or look at stuff. And there's a two-edged sword there. Some people believe that shows your level of skill, but when you have health challenges, you need to recognize what you're consuming, because maybe you really don't need to be on the medication that you're on if you change your diet. And so you have to recognize ego versus common sense at the end of the day. And if I'm having trouble with high blood pressure or diabetes, I really want to learn how to properly eat so that I'm not shortening my life.
So when you look at where we are now, and we've been on lockdown, right? And in coming to Ida B's, and we want to have a nice evening, but there are all these new rules and regulations that we're still trying to deal with, or not. I don't know where we are with any of the protocols anymore. Can you just bring us up to speed with what you all are doing and how you protect? I heard you say that you have special rooms that you can do. And do you do carry out? How does any of that work?
Yeah, so currently I'm only doing on and off premise catering, but also private events, office parties, or things like that. And what I have not done is mixed parties. And so if you have the room in the back, which is currently called the drawing room, I'm not going to bring another party in just because of what we've been through regarding that. The other reason is being able to have enough staff as well. I want to make sure that you have the attention that you need and that your event is successful and everything is great. Excellent experience when you walk away. And so I have not had multiple events at the same time. So it's your room, it's your space, it's your event. And so as we continually evolve based upon COVID, and there are a ton of people that say, you know what, we're coming out of this thing, but we also must be safe. The reality is, things that we're doing, there should have been a heightened awareness on this all the time. And the goal is prevention. It's prevention for foodborne illness, but it's also prevention for the spread of the disease. And so that's where we are. We're definitely washing hands. We're wearing gloves. Our team is still wearing masks. For your event, currently the local government does not require that you wear a mask. And so that's up to, if you choose to wear a mask, you can wear that mask. But currently that's not the case for indoor dining, effective within the last couple days or so. And that's what we're doing regarding that. You can definitely, we're cleansing the bathrooms multiple times a day. We're cleansing the location between events, and those things that are definitely supposed to take place as far as cleanliness and the spread of COVID, or prevention of the spread of COVID, we're doing in-house every single day for every event.
So
in addition to the welfare checks that we're actually documenting for staff when they come in for the day.
Okay. And that's what I was going to go back to, was the question is do people have to indicate that they've had the injection or not, or they've received any type of treatment? Do they have to show any records of that, or that's now over as well?
Yeah. Now, some of the locations in Baltimore are still doing that. It's not a requirement that you have to show that you've been vaccinated. I can say that my existing team, and I don't mind sharing that, my existing team is vaccinated, and we communicate that, and that's where we are as far
Mhm.
as the vaccination.
Okay. Well, but that's good to know. And so people know how to manage all of that. So things should be changing a little bit now that, where the doors are opening and some of the rules are, being a little more lenient. So let's go back to, because we only have a couple of more minutes. You have a big fundraiser coming up, and let's give the information again about the event and tell us how they can get in touch, how they can buy tickets, or whatever we need for them to do to participate.
Excellent. So the tickets are $100. You get a autographed copy of the book. You'll get an amazing 3-course meal, and we'll be for those people that have purchased the tickets. We'll let them know what that meal is, um, and we will definitely um, have a heightened awareness of those allergies. As far as if you're gluten free, you'll be able to eat something. If you're lactose free or have lactose intolerance, there'll be something for you. And if you're vegan, there'll be something for you.
Mhm.
Um, you'll get an autographed copy of Ida Be the Queen. I interviewed Michelle Duster last year when the book came out. And one of the things in the interview was, given the opportunity, we'd love to have something at Ida B's table. And so upon engaging her, she was willing, and that's going to happen on March the 18th
Mhm.
from 6 to 9 p.m. And there will be an intimate conversation. We will stop selling tickets once we reach 50 tickets. And I can tell you that we're over halfway there now. So the tickets are selling. And so once we reach 50 people, we will not sell any more tickets. We do want it to be intimate. There'll be a great conversation where you can ask questions, but she'll specifically speak from passing on the legacy.
Mhm.
And I think it's an exciting opportunity for people to understand who Ida B. Wells Barnett is and was, what she's done, the legacy that she's left, and then how you can go back to your family and prepare yourself to be a legacy passer.
So please give us your email or telephone number so that people can give a call to make the reservations. What's the best way to do that?
So we're only going to take Eventbrite purchases. It's very easy to control that. You don't have to wait for me to get back to you when you call. So that information is on Eventbrite. You can definitely email hello@idabstable.com. That email is still the same. And I will also give you my email just if you want to reach out to me. And that's D Purcell, DPURCELL at idabstable.com.
Okay. And I see that, as usual, thank you, Katanya, for putting up the website and the calendar for Michelle Duster. So that was really great. Well, Purcell, I'm telling you, Derrick, this is really wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. I know that the event is going to be a success. I can't wait to be, because that was my go-to place. I lived at Ida B's. So
Yes.
once we get out of this, I'm coming back. So it won't be long. But I've missed you all and that great food.
Again, thank you for this opportunity. And I just want to reiterate, we're only doing private dining and catering. We're doing special events. And also, you can catch me at the BSO on March the 26th. There's going to be an off the cuff event, and Ida B's Table will be doing a pop up there.
I love it. At the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra.
That's correct.
All right. Great. Derrick Purcell, Ida B's. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks,
And
everyone.
thank you. Have a good one. And we will be right back. Oh, my goodness. I just love their food over there with Elizabeth Liz Leiba. She's a college professor, writer, and founder of Black History and Culture Academy. She has over 10 years of teaching experience and currently works as Director of Instructional Design and Innovation, developing higher education online classes. She was selected as a LinkedIn top voice in education, topping near 100,000 connections on the platform. Her recent published writing includes a CNN op-ed piece on racial profiling, sharing her ordeal as a falsely accused and arrested college student. She was featured in a New York Times article about her social justice advocacy work and has also been interviewed by Forbes and Time magazine. We are really excited about this whole event because there is a whole new podcasting program going on from Ebony. And Elizabeth is one of those podcasters. Black Power Moves, a weekly deep dive with guests to inform about Black culture, empowerment, entrepreneurship, and history. Guests include Black tech leaders, college presidents, community leaders, trailblazing businesses, and social entrepreneurs, educators, and cultural icons. Please welcome Elizabeth Liz Leiba. Hello.
Hi, Marsha. How are you?
I am great. How are you? You know, I follow you. I'm always checking you on LinkedIn, girl.
Okay, then. I love to hear that. That's what it's all about. Love it.
As the kids say, fire.
Hey, got to give the people what they want, right, Marsha?
Yes, and it's real. So you're over at Ebony with this program, and I think this is wonderful. So they have a whole community of podcasters now. We have somebody else coming on shortly.
Absolutely.
But tell us how you got involved with this, because you've been, girl, I see you writing every single day on that doggone LinkedIn, and you just see, go in there and check. You say, yeah, go on, right. Because it's truth. It is really the truth. And in that environment, you have really made a decision clearly that it is about the truth. No matter what you want to think or what you want to view or whatever it is, what opinion you can take, you can't get rid of the truth.
Correct.
Right? So let's talk about this podcast and why this particular vehicle and why this particular podcast.
That's such a great question. And, you know, it starts in 2020. I mean, as you said in my bio, it probably starts way before then because I had a false arrest when I was 19. It was very secretive. Only about a handful of people even knew that had happened to me. But I carried that burden with me. And I think it was something that I was always very ashamed of. It was thrown out. I was vindicated. I actually won a civil lawsuit because I was arrested. Accused and arrested of shoplifting like a $2 item from a pharmacy. So once I was able to present the receipt, took 3 years to get my name cleared with a civil lawsuit just to bring that point home that I was not guilty of what I had been racially profiled, which was what my white lawyer said. He said, you know what, you're 19, you're a college student. They really shouldn't have did that. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we send a message. So I had suppressed a lot of that. And in 2020, when I saw that George Floyd was murdered in front of our eyes, I felt a sense of, okay, I work in higher education. I'm a professor. I tell my students in the classroom that you have to uphold justice. You should speak up if you see something is not right. I teach American literature. So I'm always thinking about the stories and what America is supposed to be. And a lot of people around the country said, this is not America. This is not America. And I said, that's not exactly true. Historically, America has had, I mean, there's been 4,000 plus lynchings since from 1865, right? At the end of slavery, quote unquote, the end of slavery, but at the end of slavery when Reconstruction began, up until 1955, the last documented lynching or killing, racially motivated killing, which was Emmett Till. There have been over 4,000 men, women, and children that were lynched on American soil. And I started to feel as though people in this country don't have a good perception of the Black experience. It's been whitewashed, and we see that through the pushback against CRT. We see that with people that say they don't see color or talking about race is divisive. So we know that overall there's a great amount of cognitive dissonance around race. And that was where the CNN op-ed piece came from, this desire to speak up and say, hey, I was racially profiled. For those that are thinking the only people that are racially profiled are a 6'5" tall Black man, heavy set, like a George Floyd or a Mike Brown or any of the other litany of names. Look at Tamir Rice. Look at all these children that have even been victims of police brutality. Breonna Taylor. There's the hashtags go on and on. And I was on LinkedIn at the time, just networking. I was not looking for a job. I was just like, hey, 2020, new year, new me. Did not realize at that time that we were going to have a global pandemic, that George Floyd was going to happen in May. But in February, even before George Floyd happened, I was just on the platform and was networking, had just been just reaching out to people in higher education, just connecting and just trying to learn a little bit more about my craft. And at that point, when George Floyd was murdered, I just said, you know what? I have to say something. I can't sit here and not uphold what I tell my students in the classroom, which is the same thing that my hero, John Lewis, is known for saying, which is if you see something, say something, do something, known for making good trouble. And I would be hypocritical to sit here and not say anything. So I spoke out about my own racial profiling that no one knew about. It was a big secret because I felt ashamed, but I said that shame that I feel that people will think that something differently about me because I'm a college professor and I'm supposed to be a certain perception. And I just started speaking out about things that were really bothering me about that. For example, the fact that you can have someone like a Khalif Browder who sits in Rikers Island for 4 years because he was accused of stealing a book bag. But then you have someone like Akai Rittenhouse that has an AK-47 or AR-15 the size of their body and can walk past the police and get a drink of water. And hey, you're protecting the community. So that was really what the premise of my op-ed piece that I did in October or so. It was right around Thanksgiving, I think, of 2020. How is it that me, as a 19-year-old college student, gets booked, sent to jail, arrested for quote unquote stealing a pack of batteries? The receipt actually was in my book bag the whole time, and I was able to produce it, but it wasn't until after I was bonded out by my mom. And I remember hysterically crying, and she was just like, if you would have just signed the no trespass and just told them, okay, whatever they say, they would have let you go home. And I said, Mom, I couldn't do that because that would have been admitting something that I knew I didn't do. So every day in America, Black folk are navigating being falsely accused, having to navigate spaces where we don't feel safe. We saw Ahmaud Arbery, my whole pattern of jogging during the pandemic changed because my husband would be like, well, make sure you tell me what route you're going, make sure you have your phone out, make sure that you are on a busy street. So all these things we have to navigate, and people in the majority were saying, we didn't know. Oh my gosh, it's just, where is all this coming from? So I felt it was really important for me to speak my truth. And LinkedIn was the place I happened to be. I felt like it was important to speak about those things on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is where leaders are. LinkedIn is where CEOs are, HR directors are, people that are managers, people that really are framing the direction that this country should go in. So I felt as though that was where I needed to speak about these things because these are the people that are in the boardrooms. These are the people that have the ability to make change. As my Sarah Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, pull up a folding chair, right? So I was pulling up my folding chair and I decided, you know what? I'm going to make my voice known here in this space to make sure that people understand that these are not one-off things. This is not an anomaly. This is historically something that has been happening. And even though it was frowned upon to speak about these things in a corporate space, we have to. If we don't speak about them, they'll never change.
They will never change. And they're not led to change. That it's not in their DNA. And, I'm from South Bend, Indiana. And you can see by the gray hair, that's been a while ago, right? But the reality is that, life is not what other people want to believe it is for people who have melanin in our skin.
Correct.
And how we have to function in an environment where people have made decisions about who we are, and they don't even know us. Right. They do not know. They don't know my name. They don't know what street I grew up on. They have no idea. All they see is this little right here. And they are making life and death decisions about my skin. forget who that person is inside of you, because we don't even want to get that deep. But that's too much like getting to know you. We don't want to sing the song, but getting to know you, getting to know all about you. Yeah, y'all ain't trying to do none of that.
No. Statistically, it's been shown that 80% of those in majority don't have a friend who's Black, which means that they have very little exposure to our experience. Their experience is limited to maybe people they see on their job. And if you think about how we're represented on the job, leadership wise, 3% in C-suites, about 5% of college faculty, about 7% of college administrators. So you're seeing that overall, when you think about doctors and lawyers and engineers in the tech space, always under probably less than 5% representation across a lot of those professional spaces. So how are they going to get to know us? They're not really going to have any exposure to us. Their exposure is limited to media. So a lot of times it's framed with social media, which is another reason why I thought it was important to talk about these things on LinkedIn. This is not a TikTok. This is not to say that those other platforms don't have benefit, but I think a lot of times you think of, those are frivolous spaces. A TikTok or Instagram, it's just really just to have fun. A Snapchat, I'm just posting pictures. It's just really more recreational. And LinkedIn is people are there looking for jobs. People are there networking. People are thinking about how to get tips and strategies to be successful in the workplace. Here's a strategy. Make sure that you're being intentional about diversity, equity, inclusion. Make sure that you understand the lived experiences of your Black employees so that you can create spaces where they feel safe, where they feel valued. A lot of us don't. 97% of Black folk, surveys say, do not want to return to the workplace in person. They want to remain working from home in virtual environments where they feel safer in their own home. So why is this happening? These are the conversations that need to be had. And like you said, the judgments are being made based on our skin color. So we have to make sure that we're intentional about bringing the conversations up. I always hear it's uncomfortable conversation, but it shouldn't be uncomfortable. If you're going to grow, you're going to learn. If I go to the gym, I don't say this is going to be an uncomfortable session at the gym. Or when I'm eating healthy, I don't say this is an uncomfortable salad. Right. I eat it because I know it's good for me. So we have to have these types of conversations so that we can push the envelope and we could keep pushing. Just like John Lewis said, we have to push for change. If we don't talk about these things, things will never change.
But see, now we're saying, okay, so John Lewis, because he was so straight up, he didn't even care about, what this business is, that they see Black people walking on whatever floor, major corporations, Fortune 200, Fortune 50, right? And you sit down and you walk through a hallway and you're like, well, we're the Black people. Oh, they're in the little cafeteria. Oh, wait a minute, there's somebody mopping. But I want to see somebody at the C-suite. How do I get to the C-suite? And who are those organizations that want to see me, you, us on the C-suite? But if you don't even see us as human beings, then it's difficult to get you to that place. How do we as people who are still working and still in that environment, how do we navigate this? What are you saying to those college students in your that are having to deal with this? I mean, it's real. What do you say? How do you even say it for real?
Yeah, it's hard because, for me, because I work in the higher education space, I'm always thinking about outcomes. And what we know with DEI is typically there hasn't been a lot of movement. And a lot of that is because there's this perception that they can't find qualified folk from the diversity piece. They can't find the qualified folk to fill the pipeline to get these spaces more diverse. The equity piece, we know in terms of Black women and Black men, particularly Black women, don't earn what they should in terms of when you compare to their white counterparts. We know as far as the inclusion piece, if you don't have a seat at the table, it's very difficult for your voice to be included or heard. Like you said, if you're not seen as though you're someone that is competent, and we know that a lot of microaggressions are happening in the workplace. So people are speaking over you. People don't feel like you belong there. We see countless stories. Nicole Hannah-Jones, you have so many people that have had to really push in a lot of these spaces to really get their voices heard. And then you feel like, well, if I have to push this hard, then maybe this space doesn't deserve to have me here, because why should I have to, push and I think her quote that she said was she couldn't heal that space. And for a lot of us, we really can't heal those spaces. And a lot of the advice that I give is
Did
really
you
just
say
to
heal? HEAL, heal
and
those
heal.
spaces.
Yes, she did say
and
that.
ain't enough Band-Aids.
Yes, she did say that. And when she left UNC, a part of her going to Howard was really feeling like there's nothing I can do here. I cannot recreate a space and reimagine a space. So I think a lot of the, and to talk about why I started doing the podcast, a lot of the reason why the conversations are very challenging is because of the fact that people just start to get discouraged. They start to feel as though this space, there's no way for me to heal it. There's no way for me to really get to my full potential. So maybe this space is not a space for me. So when I think about giving young folk advice, or even giving career transition advice, or people that I connect with on the platform, on the LinkedIn platform, I have over 100,000 followers. And I'm constantly thinking about how can I create space to give advice that would be meaningful and things that I've learned since I've been embarking on this journey as a social justice warrior. And part of the reason why I started the Black Power Moves podcast was about empowerment. So when we think about advice to give younger folk, advice to give those that are maybe transitioning, those that are even our same age, but maybe they're not in the same field or don't have access to those that maybe we might have access to. A part of the podcast, the premise behind the podcast was there are a lot of people, even though statistically speaking, we are definitely underrepresented. We definitely don't have the same amount of representation as our counterparts. There are a ton of Black folks that I started to see on LinkedIn that are doing phenomenal things. You have those that are working in corporate spaces across America. And a part of my rationale behind Black Power Moves was, let me start speaking with, we know there's pain, we know there's tragedy, we know there's racial profiling, we know that we feel a lot of times very dejected and demoralized by what we do see. But when I'm on the platform and I'm posting, I see hundreds of thousands of people that support my message, that want to hear about authenticity, that want to hear about keeping it real, which is what I do on the platform. And there are a lot of people that are actually leaders in some of these spaces. And I've spoken with leaders across corporate America, Microsoft, Hulu, Twitch, H&M, Lyft. There's so many, JP Morgan Stanley. I'm just thinking down the list of all of the corporate leaders that I've spoken with that are all the way to VP level, that are really creating traction in those spaces. So I think for a lot of those that are looking for advice, I think there is a sense that the leaders that I'm speaking with are speaking about their journeys and talking about how we can empower ourselves. What are some of the strategies that they've used? What are some of the things that they are doing to navigate these spaces? Like you said, well, how do we navigate these spaces? They don't even see us and they don't recognize us. And I think sometimes we are in our space and maybe we're the only one. Maybe there's a handful and we're scared to talk, right? A lot of times when we were in our spaces, it's like, I don't want to go to that person's cube.
I don't want to raise my hand to say something.
I'm going to raise my hand to say something. I don't want people to overtalk me. Am I being too aggressive? Am I being too loud? If I go to my coworker's cube, do they think that we're trying to plot a rebellion? So I think that with Black Power Moves, a part of this was I can give those that are in their own workspace, working from home, feel isolated, access to all these corporate leaders across America. And when you hear someone saying, hey, I felt afraid, I was going to step out and start my own business. I'm speaking with entrepreneurs that are saying, I didn't feel satisfied in my space, and I wanted to find a way to create my own space based on the things that I love and my passion. So I think a lot of this is us looking at different scenarios, different opportunities, things that maybe we wouldn't have thought of. And I think sometimes that the power of LinkedIn is having the ability to say, wow, I never would have thought about that. That advice is really good. Maybe I can apply that. That's a person I wouldn't have had access to. Let me follow that person's path, or just hear a little bit of a few gems that person might be able to offer me.
The little nuggets. But I want to interject something here, because trauma. This is new. This is the new buzzword for the COVID, right? Era. Trauma. It's what kind of trauma are we dealing with, and where do we put that trauma in an environment that's traumatizing, and then you've got to go back home and still be functional. How do we find that balance with what we're trying to do? And is it real? Is this something that we should be even focused on? And is there something internally in these corporations that have the capacity to even deal with traumatization? Is that a word? Traumatization?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. What you're asking is a really valid question. I've spoken with several mental health professionals as a part of the podcast, and literally none of them have said, we need to push through. Nobody is saying, don't worry about it. And I think for a lot of the older generation, that's what we were told, right? It was just like, work harder, just keep your you keep your nose to the grindstone,
Keep your head
just
down.
keep your head down, work hard, and just push through. And I think the newer generation, especially since George Floyd was murdered, and even before then, we as Black folk, we have to acknowledge that we do have trauma. We have to acknowledge that those spaces can be traumatizing. We have to acknowledge that there's community in talking about that. And I think a big part of my advice and what you're saying is, well, where do we put that? Is we have to put it on Front Street. We have to make sure that we're talking about our trauma. We have to make sure that we don't suppress our trauma. I think a big part of why my message has resonated so well on LinkedIn is because I talked about, hey, I cried this morning. I woke up and I cried so hard, I had a headache. I was crying and I just got down on the ground and I was just like, how am I going to make it through? People know that that's real. People know that that's true. And it's not something that we should feel ashamed of. The trope of the strong Black woman, the trope of, Black folk, just don't complain, just be happy to be in spaces. No one is really buying into that anymore, especially since COVID has happened. We see the Great Resignation. We see that people are quitting their jobs in droves because if they say come back to the workplace, people are just quitting because people are like, I don't want to do that. That place is traumatized. That place is toxic. So I think that a big part of coping with trauma is being honest about the fact that we have trauma. And LinkedIn has actually become a place where mental health professionals are giving advice, where people are really posting about some of the trauma that they're dealing with, and other people are chiming in and say, hey, I dealt with the exact same thing. So I think it's really important for us not to suppress our trauma. I think it's really important for us to be really honest and open. I think it's really important to have these types of discussion where we don't just say, hey, just keep on plugging away and things will get better. We have to be real about what's happening. And I think for me, I'm always thinking about the next generation. I'm always thinking about young folk. I'm always thinking about, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So thinking about just making sure that we're being mindful about just using our voices in a way that amplifies some of these important messages that need to get out there. And one of those is that the trauma is real. So we have to acknowledge it. And if we acknowledge it, then we can find some of those support mechanisms that will help us to be more effective in managing that trauma.
So let's talk about this podcast network. This is really exciting.
It is.
She who used to get Ebony, right?
That's right. That's right.
How did this come about, and how do you manage it? How do we hear it? I see that, thank you, Katanya, for making certain that we can find the network, and you've got all the links. But what made you decide to do this? They called you up and said, girl, you've been doing some really great stuff. Wait a minute, wait a minute. We looking at.
That's literally what happened. I got a DM and I was like, is this April Fool's? It's not April, but somehow I got a DM and somebody from Ebony wants me to start a podcast. It was like, I felt like I had won the lottery. Yeah, it was really exciting. Because of my presence on LinkedIn, I think that there was just the ability for me to connect with a lot of great voices and a lot of great media and different folk and different organizations that are impactful. And Ebony was one of them. So I did get approached about the idea of starting a podcast, and immediately the idea of creating a space to talk about Black impact, to talk about Black success, to talk about Black excellence. Sometimes Black excellence gets weaponized. So I wanted to also speak about it in a way that didn't feel inaccessible to those listeners that tune in. So a part of the journey for me as someone that's a storyteller was creating something where it just feels like a chat, just like what we're doing. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like the person's on a podium. Like, if you go to sometimes an event and the person's up there on the podium, it feels like I could never do what that person's doing, right? But I mean, I think a part of sometimes when we see someone like a Michelle Obama or someone where it's like, hey, that person grew up in Chicago on the South Side. That person is just like me. And I think that's what I'm trying to create in the podcast. It's just really down to earth conversations with leaders. And even though that person's a VP at A&E. I just spoke with the VP at A&E, and a part of it was just like, hey, you know, his journey and how he was just navigating how to be successful and how to channel his interests. When you speak to someone that's like, hey, I wasn't sure. I was just trying to figure things out. I was just kind of going on my journey, and these are some of the steps that I took. I think it really it empowers us because we don't see a lot of Black folk in some of those spaces. We may not be in that particular industry or in that demo in terms of that. We might not be in that field, but a lot of us can relate to this idea that we were the only one in our workplace, or we felt hesitant about pursuing a field that seemed very competitive, or we weren't sure where to go and we had a mentor or someone that said, hey, take this path, take that path. And my goal was to create mentors for everybody. Not all of us are lucky enough to have a mentor. So what if I could just curate mentors from every single tech, from education, from marketing, from business, from banking, from literally every sector across business and across education and across healthcare. I had a spine surgeon, Antonio Webb, who's really prolific online, and all he does is post YouTube videos about him doing spine surgery. He's like, less than 1% of Black men in the country are spine surgeons, but he grew up from very, very poor circumstances in Louisiana. So when you hear something like that, you're like, wow, he didn't just pop up. He wasn't like an Ivy League person that came from great means. This was someone that literally, it was almost like he went to Iraq, and he's a veteran, and he was a nurse. He was an LVN in Iraq, and literally was able to parlay his experience as a nurse on the front line in Iraq to now being a spine surgeon. And less than 1% of people in the country, black folk in the country, even have been able to do that. But the thing about when you hear someone like that speaking and they sound so down to earth, they talk about just the struggle. I think it just gives us a sense of, wow, you know, that person is just like me. And if they can overcome their circumstances, I can do that too.
You know, I think it's really important here because, you know, too often we are confined, even in our communities, and how we have to function in our communities and leave in pursuit of our dreams, but too often it's a dream deferred, right? Because of this melanin. How do we as a people, and maybe this is just a rolling question, right? How do we work together to look at how to make these changes in a united environment? Too often we're so individualized and segmented. You know, I'm just looking for one voice, right? I just want one voice to be able to be part of that, but that we bring our collective voices to say enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I find myself asking that question a lot as well. I think that there are a lot of great voices that are out there. And I think a part of also what COVID being in the pandemic has shown us is really the power of community. I think a lot of us felt very disconnected and isolated. So many people did turn to internet, but many people did network, and I've been able to create a community, which I think if when you think about the connections that we're able to make now that we wouldn't even thought about a year ago or 2 years ago, right? Because we think, well, networking happens in person, or if I want to talk to somebody, I have to make an appointment. I think that this is really the time now when you think about, well, how do we do this? How do we come together as a community? Now is the time to come together as a community. And there's so many different ways that it can be done. I think it would be great if we did have that one voice or one place to turn. But what I'm finding is that I'm all about that Voltron action. I'm all like, let's power up. We're strong apart, but if we can just power up together. So I really feel as though a lot of people are starting to realize that. A lot of people are creating these different groups. I think even when you look at LinkedIn and the amount of people that have started businesses, even during the height of the pandemic, people that have started collaborations, people that are stepping out into their truth and into their power. So I think that there definitely is a lot of work to do, but there are people that are carrying the torch. There are people that are really working hard. There are voices that are out there. I think it's just, you know, for us as a people, we just have to continue to stay strong. And I know it sounds like a trope. That sounds like a cliche that we have to stay strong. But literally, the only thing that really keeps me going is thinking about John Lewis beaten over the head on the bridge to Selma by mounted police with a billy club, to the point where he had a scar across his head for the rest of his days. Arm could not move properly, did not have full range, and still went on to serve in Congress for 3 decades. So I always think about just the idea that we have so many that have come before us, and really it's our, just like what you're doing, it's our mission, it's our responsibility to use our voice in a way that's powerful and meaningful and uplifts our community. So I think that's just the idea of just keep plugging forward. Sometimes I think it's not necessarily for me. It is for that next generation that's coming behind me. And if we can just stay strong and make sure that we use, I'm always big on spheres of influence. So whatever your sphere of influence is, use that to the best of your ability so that you can make change.
Girl, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is so, now what days are your podcasts? When can we hear them?
I drop an episode every single day.
Every single day. Is there a particular time, or we just go up to the link?
Just subscribe. And in the morning, there'll be it's just like breakfast. It's the breakfast of champions.
Okay,
just subscribe.
That's my coffee for the day. All right.
And that'll be your wake-up call, your motivation, your inspiration for the day. So every single day, just like on LinkedIn, and because you follow me, I don't go a day. Ever since George Floyd was killed, I said, I have breath in my body. So I have no excuse. I have to do something every day to uplift and amplify and motivate. The Black liberation is literally what I'm about. So I post on LinkedIn every day, and I also drop a podcast episode every day. So every morning when you wake up, you could drink your coffee, eat some toast, and you can hear
I would just drink that coffee and just be like, wait, what?
Exactly.
All right, Elizabeth Libbs, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome,
I really
Marsha.
appreciate it. This was my honor to be here with you, because I love your voice, girl.
Thank you
have a
so
voice
much
for all of us. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Marsha.
So much. Okay.
Woo.
Listen, this right here is fire. It's fire. It's just fire. We are so excited because not only do we have Liz over there, but Ebony has Ron Dawson, our next guest, who has a podcast called Dungeons and Do-Rags. Ron has lived his entire adult life as a Black man in a white world. In 2016, he had both a crisis of his Christian faith as well as a racial identity crisis. You can only guess why. Since then, he's been on a journey to reconnect his Blackness in a way he never has before. Joining him will be his Black BFFs and the Bo and Dre to his junior, JD and Yolanda Cochran. Every other week, they'll discuss issues of race and religion, politics, and pop culture. Shade will be thrown, jokes will be made, and provocative conversations will be had. He's just one nerdy Oreo trying to become a double fudge brownie, y'all. So go easy on a brother. This is what he's writing in his bio. I love him. Ron combines an eclectic mix of skills from over 25 years of branding, marketing, business development, finance, and media production experience, plus a proven content marketing record. What that means for you is that you will have a profound sense of trust, calm, and comfort knowing your project is in the hands of a consummate and experienced professional. You cannot underestimate the value of that confidence and security. As a recognized speaker, podcaster, and industry blogger, he has particular expertise in marketing too, and understanding the visual arts and high-tech industries. Whether your audience is comprised of filmmakers and photographers or designers and developers, Ron will help you create connections that matter, which produce campaigns that drive results. Please welcome Ron Dawson with Dungeons and Do-Rags.
Hey, Marsha, how are you? Marsha.
Yes. How you doing?
The secret joke to that is that I used to have crushes on the Brady girls when I was growing up.
My goodness.
Which is part of my complicated past as a Black man.
Whatever. Where did you grow up?
For the most part, I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Philadelphia, and my mom was a single Black mother, beautiful Black queen, who moved out from Philadelphia with me and my little brother when I was about 5 to Los Angeles, where she worked as a nurse at Cedars-Sinai, the hospital to the stars.
Yes.
And so for the most part, I grew up in the Southern California area.
So you grew up there, and then where did you go to school? You just decided that you were going to stay there, or are you living in other places? Or
No. I graduated from South Pasadena High School, went to UC Berkeley for college, then lived in a number of places. Lived in the Silicon Valley area for a number of years after college, then went back to LA to Burbank, then moved back to the Bay Area for a while, and then when I had gotten married, we moved. We lived in the Bay Area for a while. Then we moved. Then for about 6 years, I lived in Atlanta from like 2008 to 2014. Then moved to Seattle. My wife at the time was tired of the heat and the humidity of Atlanta, so we moved back to where she was from at the time, which was Seattle. And then for 2.5 years, I traveled we were nomads. So we would spend like 6 months a year in Europe, 3 months in Canada, and then 3 months in the US.
oh, that sounds like fun.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was right before the pandemic hit.
Mhm.
It was a little bittersweet. My marriage ended, but I had an amicable divorce. I joke in the making of the podcast and in a TV series that we're pitching, because my ex-wife was white, and we were married for 17 years. And one of the things I joke about in our pitch is that even my divorce was white, because we had a conscious uncoupling ceremony on a beach in Spain. So
I love it.
if you're going to a separation from your wife, I can think
You
of
might as well
no better way to do it than the way we did it.
make it a thing.
Yes, make it a thing.
Make it
So
a thing.
we still remain close to one another. We're still good friends. She takes care of our son, and we co-parent. And so now I am living in the Los Angeles area and doing the podcast and doing work. So enjoying life.
How did this podcast come about? What happened?
So like, as you read, 2016, I had a crisis of faith and a racial identity crisis for so many years. I like you wrote, I was a black man in a white world, usually the only black person in places where I worked. All my friends were white. My fraternity brothers were white. When I went to Cal, all my friends were white. And so when, as you said, we all know what happened in 2016. And I had a very strong connection to my Christian faith. And, one, I felt betrayed by the evangelical church in America with their support of Trump. White people who I thought were friends were saying, I don't know if you can curse on this podcast, but they were saying ish on this show. They were saying stuff, I say, online that I would never expect them to hear or say. And I was like, what? The world has gone crazy. And so I wrote this satirical memoir called Dungeons and Durags, one black nerd's epic quest of self-discovery, racial identity, and crisis of faith in Trump's America. And it's a satire about me reconnecting with my blackness. And Sam Jackson, as his character from Pulp Fiction, is sort of like comes to me, sort of like a guardian angel to help me be more black. And then the counterpart to him is the voice of Morgan Freeman. So I use these two devices as a way to
the yin and the yang.
The yin and the yang of what it means to be black in America. And then throughout the book, I have all these interactions, kind of like Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, where I meet all these black pop culture icons, where I confess my black sins. And I use those chapters as a way to engage in conversations about what does it mean to be black in America. And so, the book is being published. It's coming out this spring. And then there'll be a bigger push around Juneteenth. But I always wanted to make a podcast to kind of push the promotion of the book. And I wasn't quite sure how to do it. And then I had the idea of joining with my two friends, JD and Yolanda. They're both, a black man and a black woman who've been my friends throughout the years. And as I described, for the older people in your audience, a better description may be like they're the Fresh Prince to my Carlton in terms of how we relate. So they're constantly getting on me about things that I don't know about black culture that as a black man I should know. But they do it in love, and we've been friends for 2 decades. So the show is about these conversations I have with them. We bring on guests. And we have conversations with these other guests. And I kind of describe the show as it's kind of like Radio Lab or This American Life. It's very produced. There's a lot of eclectic music, and we bring in all these different sound bites. And it's a real fun way of engaging in provocative topics.
So in this quest,
Yes.
did you take it seriously, or was this just like a muse?
No, I think that's an excellent question. Absolutely, it was taken seriously. I mean, satirical. There's a lot of humor in the book. There's a lot of humor in the podcast, but it's used in a satirical way. It's used as a way of being able to not only to have serious conversations about politics and faith, as it happens in this country, but also to there's a lot of calling out of white privilege and talking about how that manifests itself in this country and what the effect that has, and how white supremacy ideology really still continues to affect people of color in this country today. But I also use the book as an opportunity to address serious issues within the Black community about, like, what does it mean to be Black? Like, does the kind of music you listen to determine whether or not you're quote unquote Black? Does the way you talk determine whether or not you're Black? And so it's a way of using humor and satire to address really serious questions, and we do the same on the podcast as well.
But wait a minute. So we're trying to figure out the Blackness, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the formula for you to be Black?
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the podcast and about the book is that we're not a monolith. Like, there is a lot of different ways to quote unquote be Black. I think there are certain things in our history and our DNA that make Black people beautiful, right? And not just Black people in general, but specifically talking about Black Americans.
Right.
Beautiful in terms of our contribution in art, science, the whole nine. And so I think there's certain connections to that I think are important for everyone who's Black in this country to understand as you grow. Certain way, there are important things for us to understand, particularly as Black men in this country, in terms of how you go about in the world, right? But at the end of the day, there are, for lack of a better word, certain stereotypes that are connected to Black people that don't define who you are, right? So I love The Sound of Music, but I also like 50 Cent. I love to watch musicals, but I also like hip hop videos. I love to listen to bossa nova music when I'm at Starbucks and working, but then I love putting on Kanye, or I'm a bigger fan of like Tupac and Biggie when it comes to my particular brand of hip hop that I like. Right. But the point is, I feel like I'm a complex individual, and I think most Black people are complex individuals. And when you start getting to the point where you start defining your Blackness based on stereotypes, I think that's where it becomes problematic.
I think that one of the things that's really interesting, and as we all try to quote unquote be ourselves, and then too often we're still trying to be what our environment wants us to be, right? And too often we have white people or people of other races who do not even understand the complexity of us trying to get to our own root, to that little nugget that's in there, that root that's in our heart, that's our spirit, that really defines who we are as Black people.
Right.
And or as a Black person, I am a Black woman. I am comfortable in my Blackness. And OPS, by the way, I could care less what you think about me, and you're still going to have to hear me because I'm not going to shut up. So, but with that comes all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of it. And
a lot of it.
It's like I say, where's my hip boots? Because this stuff is getting deep up in here.
That's right.
And so what do you do? How do we release? How can we release? What is it through this podcast and the conversations that you're going to have? What are we releasing to get that freedom, that peace within us
Mm-hmm.
and comfortable with whatever ounce of melanin you have in your skin or DNA.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful question. I love how you put it, getting comfortable to be released. One of the things I really like about our show and what happens, and a lot of times it happens organically, right? A big part of the show, I actually script, like I'll write it out in terms of what I'm going to say. But the conversations that happen interstitially throughout the podcast are organic. My co-hosts and I will have a 90-minute conversation, and I'll just take bits and pieces of it and put it in the podcast. And then I'll have a conversation with somebody else, and I'll just take bits and pieces of it and put it in the podcast. And I think what you find out is, one, through the diversity of the guests that we have on the show and through the kind of the conversations that come out, you realize, like you see in real time, oh, there's not just one way to be Black. And I think one of the things that I hope is, like, there's a lot of stuff that I admit on the show that most Black people would not want to admit. It would be embarrassing, right? I just give you one example.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. I'm getting ready.
There's quite a few examples.
I'm getting ready.
All right. So, have you heard of the term crabs in a barrel?
Yeah.
All right. So we're having this conversation, and we're talking about something. And my co-host JD, he says something like, "Well, it's like a crabs in a barrel mentality." And I go, "Crabs in a barrel? Like, what do you mean by that?" And he's like,
"What? You don't know that? You didn't know that?
What? I didn't. I ain't never."
What? Oh, so you ain't Black at all. You don't know nothing about the crabs in a Negro. What? Are you serious?
Trust me, Marsha. I've already gone through I've gone through it all. I've already gone through it all.
Well, you had to go through it here. You didn't know, but when you.
But so that's an example, right? And like that came out organically. Like we didn't plan that. He was just talking about it. He expected me to know it. I didn't know what it meant. And so first there was a lot of laughter about that. And then like the next episode, like half the episode was dedicated to me doing research on crabs in barrel, how many Black people actually know it, and interviewing other Black people. And so here's what's interesting. We interviewed this woman filmmaker. Her name is Leiba Karama, a terrific filmmaker. She came out with a film last year called Dreamland, The Burning of Black Wall Street. And we were asking her out because I was trying to get an idea from other Black guests on a scale of 1 to 10. How bad was it? I didn't know what crabs in a barrel meant. And she was like, "Oh man, that's an 8." Because she was like, how do we as people not talk about what we've been through if we don't talk about? She's like, that's in my lexicon. But then she texted one of her friends who was a Black man, and he said it was a 3. And he said, if you're not around hating ass people, you probably would have never heard that term. It's terrible that so many people have to know what it means. And at the end of the episode in which we kind of discussed what it means, what crabs in barrel, it was our squids, crabs, and barrels on my episode. Because I kind of did a DIY squid game where I had sort of like a trivia game with Black 70s sitcom. And so I was asking questions based on Black 70s sitcoms. And I connected it to crabs in a barrel. But at the end, the result was that it's sad that, our people have to know what it is. And I kind of ended by saying, I have a dream where not knowing the term crabs in a barrel will be just as Black as it is now, right? Mm-hmm. And so we come to this profound moment. Right. Yeah, we had a lot of fun at Ron's expense, laughing at him that he didn't know what crabs in a barrel meant. Of course. But we had this really deep conversation of like, why is it that it's so connected to the Black community, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not unique to the Black community, but it's really ingrained in the Black community.
It's what part of our in some cases, it's part of our DNA, for real.
Absolutely. Why is it so ingrained in our Black community that for so many people, knowing it is part of what it means to be Black? And what if we had a community where we weren't trying to pull each other down? And we were able to get into, like JD makes the point on that show that, crabs aren't pulling themselves out of the ocean, right? And so Black people are put in a quote unquote barrel that creates this crabs in a barrel mentality. And so we were able to talk about what does the barrel look like in America. And so we were able to take this fun situation, making fun at Ron's expense, but to get into a lot deeper discussion.
A lot deeper.
Yeah.
Because you just touched on something, because 100 years ago, I mean, really,
Right.
I wondered how the crabs got in the barrel in the first place.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so there's this great big barrel, and I can visualize those people who were part of that barrel, right? I
Right.
can visualize those crabs. I know them by name,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so what happened, that in many cases we're still turning against one another. We're still trying to take from each other, opposed to filling each other with
Yes.
love and positivity and kindness and
Absolutely.
grace and mercy. And so how do we implode the barrel?
Mm-hmm.
How do we implode the barrel? And
Yeah.
what do we do with all the crabs that are in there individually and they're collectively? Because they're going to also turn into these little communities when
Yeah.
they're running around on the beach or wherever they are, right? How do
Yeah.
we release? How do we find that freedom of our spirit?
Yeah. And I'll put another one on you. We could get out of the barrel instead of pulling each other down if we stood on each other's shoulders more.
Hmm.
Right? The crabs could actually get out of the barrel if they work together, but by instinct they start pulling each other down. And so those are the kind of things that we're able to get into through the comedy of on our show.
But you know what? That was a very good question, a very good statement, because you're talking about if we'd stood on each other's shoulders and if we were to be able to do that. But then that means that we are organized. And so
Mm-hmm.
if we can't trust, it's a trust.
Yes, very
We
much
can't
so.
trust. What happened to the trust factor? How did that happen? When you think of slavery and people bringing us here and putting us in the basement, in the bottom of these ships, and similar to the crabs,
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
right? How do you
Those are the first
juxtapose,
barrels, so to speak.
right? That
Yeah.
laid the foundation, because it was part of how many years did it take them to even get out of the boat, out of the
Yeah.
hull, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Or how many
absolutely.
died there and you cushioned yourself on a corpse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe that's why people were trying to pull people out, down, because they're trying to still get up, having had that pain and fear of slavery in the bottom of the hull of that ship.
Yeah. 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 It's um yeah, I mean if you just Marsha, when you just think about the history of Black people in America, everything that we've gone through, everything we've come through, what we continue to go through, um and like one of the beautiful things for me is, one of the things I love about my co-hosts, who are my two best friends, is that um despite how nerdy I was, despite how, quote, for lack of a better word, disconnected I was from my Blackness, they embraced me with love. Like the first time I met them was, like I said, almost, over 2 decades ago, on a film shoot. I was doing a film, they're filmmakers, and JD was my DP, my director of photography. And it was the first time where I had worked with so many other Black people. Because since I was like a little kid in school, because all throughout college, I had white and Asian friends.
Yeah.
And all throughout the set, everyone was clowning on each other. Like JD was clowning on one of the producer, and the actors were clowning each other. And they were clowning on me too, and that actually made me feel love. Like that's like in a lot of ways, in a strange way, and that's how Black people show love, is when we can make fun of each other in love. And if they didn't tease me, I probably would have felt not love, right? But
Mhm.
they felt comfortable enough to kind of embrace me. And throughout the whole years that I've known them, despite the fact that I'm like this Black nerd, and JD's kind of a nerd too, like he's into Star Wars and stuff. But in terms of like, my what I know about Black culture and hip hop, all that kind of stuff, they love to tease me, and we just have this great connection. And they have always embraced me, always made me accept me for who I am. And I think the more that we can do that as a
Right.
people, that's a great example of standing on each other's shoulders, I think.
And it's critical. And the beauty of those relationships though are they're for life, right? I've got a couple
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
friends that I grew up in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah. Yes. Very. Oh, I mean, I know of it, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's Midwest, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine what that must have been
Indiana.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of folks that don't look like us. And
Right.
you have to really in that environment, you become very close to the people that you grew up with. As a matter of fact, I grew up on the east side of South Bend, Indiana, and we have a neighborhood reunion every 2 years.
Every 2 years, you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And people go
That's
back to
amazing.
South
Is it
Bend.
is it a reunion of like your high school, college, or
It's
just the
Yeah,
neighborhood?
the neighborhood,
The neighborhood. Yeah.
east side. South Bend, when I sign some things with kids, for friends of mine who are on Facebook or something, I go hashtag South Bend East Side,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you had those experiences because we integrated. I don't know, I think I was like the second group of people that integrated the middle school and the high school. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but we still maintained our community to
Right.
this day, right? That was very important for us to be able to do. And not everybody has that type of environment. And I just wish that it were at all possible that, one day that we all can just feel free to be, just
Right.
to be. I
Yeah.
don't, if there were three things that looking at the state of where we are and the thinking about how we got here and where we're going or how to get to where we're going, what would you suggest three things that we might do
Mm-hmm.
to empower or change or strengthen who we are as a people and as a community of people?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, a lot of it's similar to what we've been saying. One, um, accept our fellow brothers and sisters for who they are.
Hmm.
Knowing really, a lot of times people say that, Black people are not a monolith. Really accept it and believe it. And, number two, like embrace the differences, like embrace, those of us who are the nerds, embrace those of us who aren't necessarily as quote unquote Black as someone else, because we all bring something to the table, right? We all
Hmm.
have different we all have different gifts that we can that we can bring. And then third, I would say, um be don't be afraid to be yourself. I mean, these are all kind of connected, but like don't be afraid,
Don't be
like
afraid to be.
to be like, right, just be yourself. And I think
Mhm.
if there's one thing I want people to get from the podcast is the permission to be
Mhm.
yourself. Like if they can listen to our show and be like, you know what, if Ron can every 2 weeks take all those jokes and be the butt of jokes and turn it around into something positive,
Right.
then I can do the same thing too, right? And and that's kind of like what I hope for, for what I bring, for what our show brings to the table is give people the freedom to realize that, hey, embrace your quirkiness, because it's what
Mhm.
makes you you.
Mhm. Be free to be you.
Yeah, yeah. Be free to be you and support others
Mhm.
who are being them,
Right.
and really realize that there's more than one way to be Black in America.
I love it. Ron Dawson, Dungeons and Do-Rags. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
so
Marsha.
much.
This
And
was fun.
take care. Please come back again. And
I
I'm
would
going to
love
be
to.
listening. You say one more time when we can hear your podcast.
It's every 2 weeks. So the next one, I'm not sure when people will be hearing this. The next one is March 15th. My co-host Yolanda just produced an episode that's all about the nomination of Ketanji Jackson
Mhm.
and the first Black woman SCOTUS. Is really good. We did an episode on Black History Month. One of my favorite episodes is Happy Birthday, White Jesus. That was our Christmas episode. So there's a lot of fun stuff there. I think every episode people will get something out of it. And then, it's every 2 weeks.
All right. Ron, thank you. Ron
Thank you.
Dawson. This was a lot of fun. Please
Thanks,
come back.
Marsha. I will. When the
All
book is
right.
out, I would love to.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
yeah. I'd love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's on. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been full. Oh my goodness, there was so much good information. I hope that you were able to write down all the information, but if not, we have a YouTube channel, so you can follow us there. You can watch us on LinkedIn. You can watch us on Facebook and Twitter, and of course, STEM City USA, and that's HHTP / stemcityusa.com. And it's a metaverse. So please go up into the newsroom and we'll catch you then. See you next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Signing off, Marsha Jews. Thanks, Katanya, our producer. All right. Thanks, everybody.